Report card time. How did the position groups as a whole perform? How did they grade out? And it might have seemed insignificant at the time, but just how important was that pass interference challenge by Lincoln Riley? Let's talk about it on this episode of Locked On USC.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Marc, and thanks for making Locked On USC your first listen every day. Whether you're watching on YouTube or wherever you download your podcast, we're free, and we're glad you're coming along for the ride. It's like jumping on Traveler every day. Appreciate you here. Without you, the show doesn't mean a thing. If you are watching on YouTube, do me a favor, click that subscribe button. It means a lot more than you think. And if you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, hit me up on Twitter at Marc Culkin. Tell me what you like. Tell me what you don't. I'm going to tell you some grades. Yesterday's episode, we talked about the individual plays and players and kind of just highlighted the game itself. This episode, the group is going to get lectured by the Nutty Professor. No offense, Jerry Lewis. Or for the younger generation, Eddie Murphy. It's a classic movie, sort of. Let's get right into it. Let's start with the quarterback play. If you're giving this group anything less than an A+, who are you using as the standard bearer? Who's setting the grading curve? Because Caleb Williams, all he did was complete his first 5 passes. He finished the day going 19 for 22 for 249 yards, 2 touchdowns. His 86.3 completion percentage was the best by a Trojan quarterback with a minimum of 20 attempts since Matt Barkley had a 95% completion percentage versus Colorado back in 2012. If you're into Pro Football Focus, PFF gave Caleb a QBR rating of 95.2. Not too bad. And then when Miller Moss played the entire fourth quarter, all he did was go 6 for 7 for 81 yards. By the way, Caleb Williams also led the team in rushing with 68 yards. It's real easy to see that Caleb Williams is very special, very dynamic, and he did everything with a very vanilla, basic, game plan. So, obviously he's going to have a tougher time this coming Saturday with Stanford. Nevertheless, when you take a look at the quarterback play, and we're talking about giving a grade based on what they did against Rice, you got to give the quarterbacks an A+. There's just no other way to look at it. Again, Caleb, 19 for 22. You throw in Miller Moss, 6 for 7. That's, 25 for 29 and over 300 yards. Not bad. Yeah. Maybe you want one or two more touchdowns out of that, considering, the team did score a lot, but remember the defense kind of took away some of their scoring opportunities. So, again, that's a real minor nitpick. You only got 2 touchdowns out of the wide receiver group. We'll live with that. Moving on, the running backs. I gave them a B+. They gained 120 net yards rushing between Austin Jones, Travis Dye, Ray Leak Brown, and Darwin Barlow. 3 of those guys scored touchdowns, and Travis Dye probably had the best snot bubbler block of the game on a blitz pickup. So, I guess I want to see a little bit more when they play Stanford this Saturday coming up. But as far as what they did, They didn't fumble. They were productive with what? How many yards did? How many? Give me a second here while I look up these stats. As a group, they rushed for. Let's see. USC is being credited for 208 yards. So take away Caleb's 68. What is it? A $140? Not bad. We'll live with that. Again, a very vanilla game plan. Let's just get right into the O-line. I'm giving them a solid A. They allowed one sack, and we could probably even put that sack on Caleb if we want to. If we're going to use my 3 Mississippi rule, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, you need to have gotten rid of the ball by then. At that moment, he probably had just finished doing his own count, and he was taken off. The one sack that USC surrendered was for a 3-yard loss. So, again, the offensive line, they surrendered one sack technically. They helped produce, again, 200 yards on the ground, over 300 yards through the air, and 6 touchdowns and a field goal on offense. While they were on the field, that was the production. Again, they were playing Rice. Everyone understands that. But they did what they were supposed to against an inferior opponent, right? They dominated them. So because they passed that first early test, you give them a solid A grade. They studied, they performed, they showed their work, and you just anticipate that they'll take another step forward from week 1 to week 2, and you know they're going to be more focused. They're heading up to the farm. They're playing that team that, you don't know why you hate Stanford as much as you do, but we're going to talk about that at the end of the show in our third segment. I think it's understandable why USC and Stanford have such a competitive rivalry. They're the only 2 private schools in the Pac-12 as we know it. And so, Stanford is the brains. USC has always been known as the football school. When Stanford decided they wanted to be good at football consistently, they made sure to take it out on USC. Anyways, I digress. The wide receivers, I'm giving these guys B+. Nothing spectacular. They didn't need to be. Jordan Addison had a couple of touchdowns under his belt. Yeah, they were short catches, 3 5-yarders, I believe. But the group, they produced 25 receptions for 330 yards. 7 plays out from the wide receiver group went for 20 yards or more. So I think that's a pretty good ratio out of 25 receptions to have 7 of those be considered big plays. It just shows the capability of this group, and you know that it's only going to get more dynamic as the season goes on. 12 different guys caught passes. Now, in those 12 guys, one of them was 1 reception from the tight end. So it's hard for me to give a grade. I prefer to give it incomplete, but that's not fair. So, you take into consideration they blocked well. I don't remember them making any mistakes where you're thinking, oh, wow, that was on the tight end. So give them a C, and you want to see more from them, I guess, in game 2. Lake McCree, by the way, was the tight end who caught the pass. So I believe that was the only time a tight end was targeted. Again, I'm doing this strictly off of recollection from the top of my head. I have not watched a replay of the game yet, believe it or not. Overall, the offense, I'm going to give these guys an A. Look, again, Rice, yeah, we get it, but they did what they were supposed to do, right? Okay, so the play calling, it wasn't perfect. Nothing is, but it was damn good. I mean, real good. Like, oh my God, good. I remember what good play calling looks like. Good. And they did it with, some quality talent. Um, that's a good thing going forward. You know that the game plan against Rice was very vanilla because that's all it had to be. So I think you saw a couple of wrinkles that they maybe didn't have to show that they showed. You saw the end around with Mario Williams. You saw the design run with Caleb Williams, and you're going to see more of that as the season goes along. You don't want to expose them too much, but you do want to take advantage of a player of Caleb Williams' abilities. So anticipate seeing more of that. Look, the offense, they had a real early test, and the coursework is going to get significantly tougher on this Saturday against Stanford. Are they as good as I'm, inferring? We'll find out. They beat Colgate 41-10. They should beat Colgate 41-10. All right, we got a new sponsor on this episode here, and they are Underdog Fantasy. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up your college football season. And I do want to emphasize the easiest way to get started and the easiest way to play to watch your favorite team. Let's see here. You can win cold hard cash in a single game. Oh, this is a quality product. You want to know why? They've got investment backing, from Mark Cuban, Kevin Durant, Adam Schefter, and more. So those, if you trust those names, you can trust this site as well. They've always been focused on building a superior product for a fun user experience. Customer support team is top notch, the best in the business. So here's what you want to do. Sign up with the promo code Locked On, and Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. Deposit $100, you're going to get $100 for free. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store or the Google Play Store. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On. Get in on the college football pick'em action today. All right. Before I hand out the grades for the defense, I want to point out something that Riley did to help the defense in that first game. It might have seemed insignificant at the time, but it was actually a really big play at the time for the head coach. It was a huge challenge, and I think it actually changed the complexion of the game to the point where the defense was able to get off the field, and they got fired up because of it. It was their first 3 and out of the game. Rice was basically doing their best Stanford impersonation. Their staff came from Stanford, so they run a similar offense, just not with the same quality of players. And they were basically on their third offensive series. If had this pass interference call not been overturned, I'm not sure the defense would have survived this series as well. So whether it was Lincoln Riley or one of his spies in the sky, someone recognized that the ball was tipped, and they challenged the pass interference call that would have kept the Rice offense on the field, and obviously the USC defense on the field. Up until that point, Rice was perfect on their third down conversions, and they were chewing up the clock with the time of possession. Their first scoring drive took over 11 minutes. The second one combined for 8 minutes when you take the last minute and a half of the first quarter and the, I guess, 6 minutes and change of the second quarter. They were doing what they wanted to. So what happens if that call, number one, doesn't get challenged or overturned? So kudos to Coach Riley or whoever said, hey, coach, that ball was tipped. Let's get this let's get this call reversed. They did what they needed to do. We know what the defense did after that. The defensive line, look, if we're being honest here, they were the weakest link of the three different levels of the defense. So I'm going to give those guys a C plus B minus. Again, though, when you look at the stats, the score and the scoreboard, you say nice job, right? 2.5 sacks out of the 4 that the team had total. They had 4 of the 8 combined tackle for loss. So here's what you need to do, though, when you kind of peel back the layers a little bit. You focus in on the rush end. You need to get more out of that group. Period. Romello Height got ejected for a targeting, and Corey Foreman, he's giving the effort, but at this point right now, when you watch him, it looks like he's got one move, and that's to try and bull rush everything, and he's just getting swallowed up and lost in the pile. He's got to learn he's got to be able to read the play, scrape off, and get more involved. Get in that backfield. Make the runners go east-west as opposed to running around him or through his gap. That's got to improve. I'm pointing it out because they expect a lot from that position. It is the go position in Alex Grinch's defense. Dejon Benton, look, he led the group with sacks. I think, with tackles. He had 5. You barely heard Tuiapelotu or Nick Figueroa's name throughout the game. They each had 1 tackle apiece. So, again, overall, they did their job. They didn't hurt the team. There's some work to be fixed, mainly gap control. But you give them that grade. You say, hey, go work harder, improve, and see what you can improve next week when you play Stanford. And again, without those, you also look at the couple of gash plays that they had, where the Rice running backs were able to get some big chunk plays. That kind of it starts up front, so they had to get through that first level to get into open space. And so I'm going to hold them 50% responsible for those big runs. The linebackers, I'm going to give them an A. And how can you not, really, when you think about it? 2 pick sixes on back-to-back plays, one by Shane Lee, the other Raylan Goforth. Overall, I mean, they took good angles. They tackled at the point of impact. The team had 38 total tackles. The linebacking group produced 14 of them. Outstanding. Will Eric Gentry, is he going to play the mic the whole game against Stanford? Or are they going to need to move him around? Are he and Shane Lee going to be a little bit more versatile? Shane was at the wheel. They got Eric in the middle. I think the game plan is your USC should stack that box. You take away the running game, you make Stanford's good quarterback, Tanner McKee, beat you. But you need to make them one-dimensional. And I think USC's linebacking group is quick enough to be disruptive. This could be a really big game for them. I anticipate them having a good game against Stanford. They need to have a good game. The defense needs to play very well against Stanford because USC is going to score a lot of points. So, again, we're not looking for elite defense. We're looking for serviceable to good. And my definition of that means get off the field at least 3 to 4 more times than Stanford. Give yourself 3 to 4 more offensive opportunities than Stanford's going to have. Speed up the game because you know Stanford's going to want to slow it down. The secondary, I'm going to give them a B+. They didn't get beat deep. Kalen Bullock, obvious MVP of the defense, without a doubt. I mean, on back-to-back plays, the guy literally went 50 yards. He chased down the Rice running back 55 yards, preventing a for sure touchdown. And then on the very next play, he turns around and runs 97 yards to the house for the interception return. Not bad, right? Tackling, I thought, was pretty good. Latrell McCutcheon from his nickelback spot, blitz, got one of the team's 4 sacks. Zamarian Gordon, he was next man up. He recorded USC's 4th interception of the game. You know, I guess we won't hold it against him. He didn't return it for a touchdown, but hey, nobody's perfect, right? So, yeah. The secondary, they performed really well. Granted, they were going up against a quarterback and receivers that had hot potato fingers. But they were in the right position to make the play. The one pass interference call, no big whoop because it got reversed. They'll need to play better against Stanford. Sound like a broken record, but hey, you know what? Rice was the perfect first game. You work out some of the kinks. Everybody's getting familiar with each other, and they were playing on. It was a hot day on Saturday. The temperatures in Palo Alto Saturday 4:30 kickoff, I believe it was around 82 degrees. So perfect football weather for the end of summer, second weekend of September. Let's get into the special teams grade. Place kickers, holders, A-, B+. Look, Dennis Lynch, perfect with his duties. 9 for 9 PATs. He connected on his 25-yard field goal. 9 for 9 left him one short of tying a USC record, going 10 for 10. That happened when USC dropped 70 points on Arkansas back in 2005. The snaps and the holds were perfect. So, again, no issues there. Punting, they had one punt. That was confirmed. I think it went 25 yards. It wasn't the prettiest of punt. I'll call it a flutter. But, you know, by hook or crook, get it done. They got the ball inside the 20-yard line. I don't think it was intended to look like that. But, again, it got the job done, right? Let's hope it was just first game jitters for the young man from Australia. Aiden Dalton Sleep. Or is it Aiden Sleep Dalton? His name's Aiden. Punt return. They need to look. Gary Bryant had a couple of opportunities. We need our guys because they are athletic enough to make the first guy miss and then go. They need to get upfield. First game out, get it. Hey, let's see if they look better game 2. Kickoff return, we didn't really have that many opportunities. Kickoff coverage, they need to have better lane and gap control. That's all I'm going to say there. I think overall, special teams, again, I gave them, A-, B+. I'm probably being gratuitous here, but again, what really stuck out to me, you want your new place kicker and kickers doing their job, and they did. Alex Stadhouse, all of his kickoffs did exactly what they were intended. Either, I believe he had 7 touchbacks. One was a almost perfect coffin corner that Rice returned. The other 2 were basically at the goal line, making them have to return them or fair catch. So 0 issues with special teams other than kickoff coverage needs to get a lot not going to say a lot better. They just need to get better as the season goes on. I'm going to be very fair first game out. All right. On Inside the Trojan Huddle podcast, the weekly podcast I do over there on wearesc.com, we had a question that came up that the host Greg Katz put out there for the panel. But I'm going to narrow this down for this show. Which Stanford loss bothered you the most? USC, first of all, should never, ever lose to Stanford. Of course, USC, they're going to, but for whatever reason, I mentioned this earlier in the show, these two teams don't get along really well. There's a lot of animosity between them. If you listen to Kevin Bruce, former team captain who played on the John McKay teams in the early 70s, I encourage you to go check out this week's episode of Inside the Trojan Huddle. You could really feel his animosity. He does not like Stanford at all, period, exclamation point. Anyways, I came up with two games. There was two games that pretty much everybody agreed that these ones were the two worst losses. The 41.5 point, when USC was favored by 41.5 points over Stanford, that upset shocked the nation. I mean, you want to know how big of a upset that was? Sure, Appalachian State went into the Big House and beat Michigan, but that didn't have the impact around the country like this one did. LSU, I can't remember who they were playing. Go look it up on YouTube. Their game literally came to a stop when the final score was announced that Stanford had upset USC. And on the field, their game came to a stop because the players, both teams, were jumping up and down and applauding. The fans in the stand, it looked like at least a 3.0 Richter scale. 3.0, it would have registered on the Richter scale if we were having an earthquake. I mean, it was loud. It was raucous. That loss didn't bother me, though, that much, because Pete Carroll's arrogance cost USC that game. Had he just said, you know what, John David Booty, your finger's broken. You can't throw the football. I need you to sit down this game. They don't lose this game, period. And then, trying to outthink yourself, calling that timeout at the very end of the game, giving Jim Harbaugh the chance to, get his players lined up one-on-one the way he wanted. Again, sometimes you just got to let the players do their job. And when they're not healthy enough to do it, you got to put the healthy guys in there to do it. The loss that, for me, was the worst loss was the what's your deal? In that game, when they did everything they did, they went for two to put 50 points on the board. Jim Harbaugh was doing to USC what USC had done to everybody for basically 5-6 years. And when Jim Harbaugh smelled blood in the water, he just turned his guys loose. I mean, go back and watch that game. USC got pushed around like Clay Helton's teams were getting pushed around. I was, as a fan, I was never so angry. I mean, you saw how Pete reacted after the game. He wasn't sure what to do. I mean, we all read the lips. I can't say what he really said, but it was, to the victor go the spoils. Revenge is a dish best served, right? Last year, everybody got their chance to take out their revenge. As it turned out, USC wasn't a very good team. So, yeah, it might have felt good at the moment. You might be regretting how you treated USC last year. each one of those teams that laid a butt whooping. It's a new season. Lincoln Riley's the head coach. So there you go. Episode number 2 in the book for this week. Locked on USC comes at you 5 days a week, 30 minutes, all the news and notes you can get. I'm actually going a little bit long here. That just shows you there's a lot to talk about in this game 1. I'll be back again tomorrow with another episode. Until then, everyone, you know what to do.